Welcome to Latino Talk TV. I'm your host, Ben Mendez, joined by my co-host, Mr. Javier Perez. Today, we have Ms. Kim Ogg running for District Attorney of Harris County. So thank you so much for joining us, Kim.
Thank you, Ben.
And
It's great having Kim here. You know what? I've told Kim before, but I sat on one of her juries back in the early 90s when she was just out of law school. She probably was only 12 or 13.
Good.
She was tough as nails.
She still is.
She was assistant DA. It was in Ted Post court, and it was a long drawn. It was a couple of weeks, and I tell you, it was like watching a chess match. It was very. I mean, when she saw that door open, she would nail those other attorneys. And I think I told you about the case, but they were trying 3 defendants at once. And she was the state's attorney, so she was up against 3 different people, and she got 3 convictions.
She nailed it, huh?
She nailed them. She nailed them. I knew she was up, and I knew from the name. I remember her dad.
You can slip them $20 later.
Thank you. It's all true.
Ever since then, I mean, I've been a Kim Ogg fan,
Big fan.
And I saw her later with the task force that you were. Was it the gang task force? Yeah, I remember that. And
anti-gang.
And I tell you, it's great to have someone of her professional caliber up for district attorney. And I'll tell you, I think she would be fantastic.
So before we get into the nitty-gritty, I have to give congrats to Cleveland Cavaliers.
Oh man!
For winning the NBA
I tell you,
championship.
these guys came back from nowhere.
They were down 3-1.
Never happened before.
And they won 3 games in a row to win the NBA championship. So they're having a parade today. Maybe it's already passed, but
hey, did you hear what they did as soon as they got on the plane? They changed course and went to Vegas.
Oh, they
spent
went to
all night in Vegas, then came into Cleveland.
Is that right?
They started a little stopover in Vegas.
Well, you win the championship, you can do that kind of thing, you know?
I don't even know. I don't even want to know how much money they lost over there in Vegas or won.
So the day after the election, Kim, are we taking a Vegas trip?
We're going to Disneyland. That's what the Super Bowl guys do. They go to Disneyland. I think that's where we're going.
That's
man,
good. All right, so let's talk a little bit about your race. Okay, so tell us from the very beginning. You had your first run 2 years ago, right?
I did.
2 years ago, and for the same race, and now you're coming back with vengeance.
I am.
So tell us about this race.
So the 2016 race is rematch of 2014. 2014, very few Democrats showed up to the polls. All the Democrats on the ticket were wiped out. We all lost. Poor voter turnout. But I came the closest. I got the most votes of anybody in Harris County, and many crossover votes, Republicans and Democrats, because I think people know that while the race is partisan, the job of district attorney is not partisan. Never should be political at all. In fact, the criminalization of politics is a whole topic we should talk about. It's dangerous and it's scary. So when we've got somebody making political decisions instead of legal and judicial type decisions, I think we've got a problem. This year is a presidential race. We have 2 presumptive nominees that couldn't be more opposite. And with Mr. Trump's hate rhetoric filling the airwaves, I'm hoping that that motivates every voter out there who is a Latino, a woman, a Muslim, and really any other minority, it seems like, other than the Donald Trump and the Donald Trump fan club. He's very narrow in his appeal. And I think that may impact every Republican in the county. And we've got a good shot of turning this county blue in 16. I hope to lead the ticket that way. That's our goal.
So you're at the top, obviously, Harris County wide. You and Ed Gonzalez.
Me and Ed Gonzalez, Ann Bennett for tax assessor, and Vince Ryan for county attorney. So you have a very diverse, typical Democratic ticket. Everybody's qualified, everybody's experienced. We've got 2 women, 2 men. We've got a Latino, we've got 2 Caucasians and an African American, and we're looking good.
That's great.
Now, Kim, didn't in 2008 and 2012 wasn't Harris County blue as far as the total votes? It did go
in presidential years.
Yeah,
2008,
exactly.
First time in almost 20 years that happened. And then in 12, we were barely blue. So about half the judges who were Democratic lost their seats to Republicans, but the president eked by with about 0.5% lead here in Harris County. And we think that Hillary can do much, much better than that in 2016. She's going to appeal to women. She's going to appeal to Democrats. And it seems to me that in talking to many of my Republican friends who are on the reasonable end of that party, they may be staying home.
It's going to be interesting, the Trump effect, if you will. There's a lot of people that are anti-Trump, and then you have those that are totally with Trump. So it's going to be interesting who comes out to vote.
You know what's even crazy is they're totally with Trump. They're Latino. That is, oh my gosh, that's such an oxymoron. Be a Latino.
Speaking of that, did you see
Well,
the
it's
article?
like chickens voting for Kentucky Fried Chicken. I mean, it's against the interest of any Latino.
You know, I
to
got
vote
into
for
it
Trump.
over the weekend with a few people I won't name over Latinos backing Trump, and I said it's like Jews voting for Hitler.
It is.
I said it's ridiculous. How can you be
Did you
that
see Jacob
self-defecating?
Monte's piece in the
I
Houston
saw
Chronicle?
Jacob, you know, and I know Jacob. He was a real good friend of my older brother John, and but I don't understand this. It doesn't, you know, I can't fathom this. How can, you know? And I've saw some posts in Facebook that, you know, it's Latinos that want to have they think they have a one-up over the regular population or whatever of Latinos, so that's why they.
You know, you just can't close the door behind you. I think in law we've seen where somebody will get a recovery, you know, for a type of injury or auto accident or something that befell them, and then they get on a jury, somebody similar is injured, and they vote against them. So it's important to have compassion.
Well, that comes straight down from the governor's office. I mean, he was the,
He's the prime example.
He was a prime example. He sued somebody over his accident he had, and the tree fell on him.
Got
that put him,
millions.
got millions. Then turns around and wants tort reform. You know,
Well,
they
he-
can't sue doctors.
he
or
led
whatever.
it. Yes,
he
he
led
did.
he led the fight for it.
So I think it's just it's important that when it comes to criminal justice issues, people understand this affects everybody, but nobody leaves their house thinking they're going to be harmed by a criminal or arrested by policemen. Everybody thinks they're going home. So there's a real tendency to think, oh, those criminal races, they don't affect me. But in truth, over 100,000 people are charged with crimes every year, and as many
Here in Harris County?
Here in Harris County, and over 200,000 people in Harris County are victimized each year, whether it's burglary or theft or worse, robbery, rape, or murder. So we are being impacted. And if you think, well, I've never been victimized by a criminal, well, then you're lucky.
Right.
That's good, but it's really important that you elect the right DA. And when it comes to being arrested, of course, people don't think they're going to have bad judgment and maybe drink too much. Nobody predicts that. But everybody has kids. And we know that we've seen a lot of violence between police and the people that they pull over, regular citizens. Many of them are young. And black. And I see all of our children in those situations. We just got to make sure that we're protecting everybody's civil rights and making them safe, all at the same time. So we can do both.
So based on your numbers, you said 100,000 people are convicted
Yeah.
every year.
Yes.
So basically, how many crimes is that per day? About 300 plus crimes a day that they're reporting?
At least. I think there's 57 law enforcement agencies across Harris County.
Isn't that amazing?
57.
Yeah.
I had no idea it was that many.
Yes, and think they're large departments too. You got the Sheriff's Department, the Houston Police Department,
And still they can be
Pasadena
said
Police
they're
Department.
undermanned. You know, 57 and they're undermanned.
We have a lot of duplication,
Yeah.
people doing the same jobs. There's a lot of taxpayer waste in the way the criminal justice system is operated, and I think that taxpayer waste is just as important to the people paying, their percentage of income tax, even if it's lower than the top 1%. All of us care how our tax dollars are being spent. We expect and want good service from our law enforcement and from our courts, and I intend to lead us that direction. There's way too much waste. They spend $70 million a year in the district attorney's office, yet less than 100 rapes were prosecuted last year. Murders up 25%. We're paying more, but getting less for our money. So I think that's an issue that people care about. They don't want to be victimized. whether it's by a criminal or whether it's during an arrest. They want to be safe, and we have an obligation as government to provide people those services, those very basic services, for the money that they pay in taxes.
Now, wait a minute, Kim. You're not supposed to be the law and order candidate here. You're supposed to be the liberal, free spending, but you're very fiscally responsible, and that's part of your drive toward the DA's office. It needs to be more fiscally responsible.
It is.
And you know, do you think Democrats probably get a bad rap for that?
Well, I think Republicans try and pigeonhole us in a way that is repeated, but not based on the facts. There are many Democrats who are conservative. I know that Vince Ryan runs his office within the limitations of his budget. You know, Adrian Garcia ran under budget at the Sheriff's Department. So Democrats, especially those of us who have worked in government, understand how important it is to make those dollars stretch. And in crime, we really have to do it. So that's why it's important to get rid of the duplication in law enforcement, get some leadership that can appeal to all those 57 law enforcement agencies and the citizens at the same time. We can be free and we can still be safe.
So right now, the district attorney's office, how are they running budget-wise? Are they running over budget? They staying under budget, or what's the problem?
Good question. My opponent's gone from a $56 million budget in 2013 to a $70 million budget in 2016. And so we've seen rapid increase in the amount of expenditure, and yet crime is up. Homicides are up by 25%. And I hear the same thing. Oh, we don't have enough resources. It's simply the way that they're being used.
That's over a 20% jump.
It is.
Holy smokes.
I know. We should have a 20% crime reduction.
My goodness.
I mean, that's the way it would have
It's a
gone.
big number.
That is a
significant
I had
number.
no idea it was that big.
So let's talk a little bit about the presidential race, because I wanted to get into the Trump factor. So have you all looked at people that are actually going to stay home and actually come out to vote? Have y'all done a poll as to Republicans?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. He's not the nominee. I'm just basing what I've said, that a lot of my Republican friends are talking about staying home. They're women. They're fiscal conservatives. They care about their pocketbook, but they also believe in equal rights and in equal application of the law. And I don't think you can talk about women the way Mr. Trump has talked to us and expect to earn our vote, especially when you're against the most qualified woman, most qualified person to run for president in my lifetime.
You know, it's amazing, because even one of the, I'm not sure what's his first name, one of the Koch brothers is talking about not endorsing Trump. That's seriously not endorsing him, not helping, and you know, that's hundreds of millions of dollars.
And by the way, that's not Coca-Cola. It's Coke. K-O-C-H.
I think it's Stephen Koch or something. I can't remember his first name, but
the brothers.
The Koch brothers. And you know, when I've heard their interview, this guy sounded very, very moderate. You know, I couldn't believe it was from his reputation. I thought this was some ultra conservative, hard right winger, but he was very, very well spoken. And very even keel kind of guy. He came up with some very, very good views on Trump and the direction he would take the country. So I mean, you know, that's scary. That's scary when he can't even get his own people. You know, and I've told people this on Facebook. I said, you know what? He's going to be the undoing of the Republican Party, and they only have themselves to blame. They only have themselves to blame for letting this.
Well, that
wane.
hateful message about building the wall and deporting, you know, millions of people in this country, it just falls on hollow ears. Our economy, our culture is based on diversity and inclusion, and we certainly don't want to support people who come here in an undocumented fashion over their equal counterparts who are trying to get citizenship through legal channels. But we can't just split up families, send children home. We just can't do some of the things that he's proposing. It's like not wanting to give them treatment at the hospital or provide education. In our country, I think people believe we want the folks here to be treated fairly and equally.
So let's talk about the vice presidential picks. Now, we've heard rumors that Julian Castro will be VP pick for Hillary Clinton.
And Elizabeth Warren also, I believe, right?
Now, we've also heard rumors that Mr. Trump is going to pick someone from the inside, ironically, a senator or a congressman. And his campaign is all about being the outsider, right?
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see how they spin that. Yeah. But getting back to if there is a Latino on the ticket, your numbers will definitely increase as far as number of Democrats coming to the polls. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. What have you heard out there?
I've heard the same thing, and the Latino population, doesn't vote straight Democratic. There's a lot of Republican voting. There's a lot of split ticket, especially with these millennials. They're very independent. I respect that, and I think that Castro would be a draw with Trump being a negative, and you get the perfect storm going, and you're not only going to attract more Latinos, some of whom would have voted Republican if they'd had a reasonable nominee, but you're going to attract a lot of millennials. And the big winner to me in the mix are women, female voters. I know that in our Democratic primary this year, women won. I won without a runoff. I had 2 opponents, won over 50% of the vote, and I attribute it to women.
You know what? And you, that was a strong candidate. That was Morris Overstreet, right?
Yes.
He was.
And Lloyd Wayne Oliver, who
That's
runs
right.
every time. He's not a credible lawyer. He's got a poor reputation, but he's got some name ID because he runs every 4 years.
Yeah.
And so you pull up district attorney in Google, and you get Lloyd before you get Devin.
Yeah, exactly.
So they were both.
So
tough
that
candidates.
was very that was impressive. That was impressive. You had that kind of support.
I did.
Especially with like winning without a runoff. I don't know if people realize how big a deal that is.
Well, I
But
think some of
especially,
that
yeah.
has to do with being a hometown girl. I've
Right.
worked here in the legal system. I've worked for clients and crime victims for 30 years, and I think our people know each other. I think we know who works for
I think your
us.
message is getting out. I think her
Is there any
message is getting
congressional races going on in Harris County for November?
There are.
Okay.
I know
which
that
ones?
7, that Culberson, that's not the right, it's not, I don't think it's 7, I can't remember, but I know that Culberson is up against Cargus.
I'm not sure who that is.
It's on the west side.
Yeah.
Cargus, you said?
Yeah, James Cargus is the Democratic nominee, good friend. And then John Culberson is the incumbent.
Right.
He's against all mass transportation. He blocks our funding quite a bit.
Right.
So, you have a good, I think, choice there, a clear choice. James is for modernizing the city in terms of mass transportation. Mr. Culberson, Congressman Culberson's been against it traditionally and voted against it and kept funds from Houston. So you've got a good contest there. And then I'm not sure about Nick Lampson's old seat, but I think that it's up for grabs too. So
Isn't that further south?
it is.
Okay.
It is.
Yeah.
It's not really Harris County.
Right, right.
That's Fort Bend, isn't it? Is that
And down
Sugarland
south,
area,
I think
something
it
like
goes
that? Yeah.
down into Ron Paul's old area.
Okay. So what about the state level? What races are out there?
Well,
I know we have one in the East End over there. There's Mary Ann Pettis
important race.
is running
We've
against.
got a bunch of state representatives that are up. I don't think the senators are up. They were up 2 years ago, most of the Harris County senators. So you've got Mary Ann Perez's race. You've got the one that is over in Fort Bend, Ron
Reynolds?
Reynolds, right? He's an incumbent. Who else is there? We've got plenty of state reps.
Oh, yeah,
And I
they're
tell you
all up.
what, Ron
Ana
did.
Hernandez, I don't know if
Yeah.
she's up. I think she is.
Yeah,
Does she have an
everyone-
opponent?
It's every 2 years. So they're
Yeah,
all
but does
up.
she have an opponent in the Republican side? I doubt it.
I don't think she does.
No, but Ron, I tell you, Ron's a great friend of mine, and I'm so glad he won that nomination for the Democratic Party. He's done a lot of good things. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in that race. Now, getting back to the state level, so I can't think of any other races, so that brings this down to the Harris County level. So Ed Gonzalez is running for sheriff. This is actually his 4th race, I guess. He ran 3 times as a city council member, so he does have a little bit of name ID. He was the mayor pro tem, And so now he's running countywide. He's trying to follow Adrian Garcia's
And he was a
footsteps.
retired police officer.
Right, right. He's
Well, and we've got a clear choice between he and the current sheriff.
Hickman.
Yeah, so Hickman fired a lot of the minorities right off,
Yeah.
staffed it with
Absolutely right.
Caucasian males, you know, very traditional, good old boy type of setup.
Well, he did get some flack over that.
We've seen
Yeah.
a bunch of deaths in the jail under his watch, 5, I think, this year alone. And so we don't see an improvement in the services. I don't see, I've heard Sheriff Hickman out on the west side of town promoting, you know, traditional law enforcement, I guess, messages, report what you see, et cetera. But I'm not hearing anything about how he's going to fix the problems. And he's running with my opponent. And so Ed and I have proposed policies that will mesh nicely. For example, my ability to reduce the number by 12,000 a year just by starting with marijuana and not prosecuting misdemeanor marijuana, that's a tenth of the population, a little bit more than a tenth of the population going through the jail each year. So that 10% could give Ed the room and the money to provide more, I think, safety, more health care, more services to the people who he's responsible for incarcerating.
Speaking of money, now when the new sheriff was appointed by Harris County Commissioner's Court, they gave him more money in his budget. When Adrian Garcia was there as sheriff, he had to fight tooth and nail for his money.
The Commissioner's Court is almost all Republican except for one seat, and they starved Adrian Garcia's budget as sheriff. It caused a lot of problems. I think it was an intentional move by Commissioner's Court to make the sheriff look as bad as they could. The DA, meanwhile, a Republican, we've just talked about that. Her budget increased 20% in the last 2 years alone. So, yeah, we see some differential treatment, and it impacts people. I think that's what I want our viewers to know. These decisions don't happen in a vacuum. They affect us in our own home, our own backyard, our own neighborhood, our place of business. When we don't get appropriate service for the tax dollars we're paying, and we have to hire, let's say, constables to patrol the neighborhood, that kind of thing, you're really paying twice for the same service. And so it's important that the leaders in local government are responsible to the taxpayers. And what's our job? Public safety. Make people safer. So don't listen to a DA who tells you the crime rate's not her problem. She's directly accountable to the public. The leadership that the DA provides should be directed at reducing the crime rate, working with the sheriff and working with the police chiefs in all those different agencies in a way that is fiscally responsible and works. We got to catch criminals. We got to stop burglars. We have the worst burglary rate in the country. I don't know if you've been hit, but I have. And it really is a violation. It's just terrible. They steal your personal mementos and belongings, things that were passed down for generations, like jewelry or other mementos that have some value, coins,
Absolutely.
Right.
war medals.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. Absolutely right. Do we need to take a break, Ben, or?
We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more with Kim Ogg, but I'm really curious to find out what your stands are on different issues. I want to talk about, obviously, marijuana use. We talked about that.
We'll come back with
that. We talked about that in a little bit. But I want to hear about the gun control.
Yeah.
I think that's very important. And deportation of inmates with INS. So when we come back, we'll talk about those issues and much more. So we'll be back in 2 minutes. Don't go away. Welcome back to Latino Talk TV. And by the way, we're in Houston's East End, just east of Minute Maid Park. Beautiful weather out here. Don't you agree?
If you like 97 degrees, 100%
Oh,
humidity,
it's
you're in
perfect for the
paradise.
desert. That's right. The
Great
desert
weather.
with 100% humidity.
So we have Mr. Javier Perez and Ms. Kim Ogg running for district attorney, and we're going to talk a little bit about issues now. So let's get right to it, Kim.
Let's talk about the marijuana, Ben.
Let's do it. The
Yeah.
marijuana use. Now, I'm going to admit it, okay? I tried marijuana.
You inhale.
I inhaled.
Well, I'm a lot like a dog, so I never touched it.
You never touched it. You know, and honestly, I didn't see a big deal about it. It was just like drinking beer. I mean,
Yeah.
get a little buzz, and that was about it. But to go to jail for 10 years of your life for carrying X number of whatever it is that they have, I see that as a little bit too much.
No, Kim, and yeah, if you could explain to us what you mean by misdemeanor marijuana, not that you wouldn't prosecute it, it becomes like a ticket or like a traffic ticket.
No,
or
let
what?
me explain. So marijuana, like many drugs, the seriousness of the crime is based on how much you have, and sometimes where you have it. If you have it in a school zone, for example, you're in more trouble than if you have it in your car, in your driveway. So the weight is what determines the charge, the level of charge. So almost all the cases filed in Harris County are people who are in possession of less than 2 ounces of marijuana. So usually,
How much is 2 ounces, more or less?
2 ounces is about that much.
It's about half a baggie. If you think like a sandwich bag,
2 ounces,
less
little.
than half.
Okay.
Anyway, about
And the only reason I know that,
about that much.
the reason I know that is because I smoke a pipe and I buy about 3 ounces at a time.
Quit lying.
Yeah, and of course, you know, pipe, it's
Quit
perfectly legal. Pipe tobacco is
Quit
legal.
lying.
He's gonna need his lawyer pretty quick. He's gonna need his lawyer.
But yeah, so no, it's about half a baggie, and that's
But most
3
people
ounces.
get arrested with a joint or even half a joint, you know, a piece of a joint. And sometimes there's 3 people in a car and 1 joint in the ashtray and everybody gets charged.
Yeah.
So the big problem is that it clogs up our jails. We put these mostly nonviolent offenders, a lot of people who don't have serious criminal records, into the same cells with people charged with very serious crimes who are career criminals. And it's a terrible influence and it's dangerous and we've got to stop doing that. And then when we process these folks through court, again, the options are the same for an aggravated robbery as they are for these low-level drug offenders. Either a conviction where you go to jail or probation or deferred adjudication. So any of those 3 outcomes means that you'll have a permanent criminal record. And once you've got 1 charge, then it unfortunately is likely that you'll continue and get other charges, either through your own behavior or by becoming a target for law enforcement.
Right.
So we want to keep people in the workforce. And to do that, I want to eliminate the charge for misdemeanor marijuana. Couple of reasons. It's been used against minorities far more than it's been used against Caucasians. That's a fact. It's reported locally and nationally. And the second reason is the fiscal argument. We spend about $10 million a year prosecuting people for a joint.
And that's in Harris County.
That's
Is that
in
right?
Harris County.
Harris County.
12,000 people a year, $10 million. And yet we've got a backlog of rape kits. We've got a serial rapist over on the north side who raped at least 15 women that we know of
Hasn't
and
been
got
caught.
away with it for several years because the rape kit that that his victims submitted, many of them weren't tested against his known identity. He was even in jail before many of the rapes were committed, and so they had his sample. So these untested rape kits are a huge public safety threat. And so is putting young, non-experienced people in the same jail cell as you do experienced habitual criminals. So I just see diminishing return for our tax dollar.
So the inmates are taking advantage of basically in the prison, in the jails.
They are.
Yeah.
They clearly are. And if you can't hire a lawyer, you're likely to spend 5 days there, which means your car's going to be impounded. There won't be anybody to take your kids to school. They may go to CPS. You're probably going to lose your job. And so for people living paycheck to paycheck or with just a small amount of savings, this is a life changer.
Oh, yeah.
Then if they get convicted, they lose their driver's license. That directly impacts the labor
Long-term?
pool.
Long-term?
Yeah, until they reinstate it. Forever,
Wow.
until they reinstate it. So they can reinstate it after a year, but it costs more money. There's reinstatement fees, et cetera.
And in reality, these people keep driving because they got to go to work.
Right.
Do that, and they get popped again. And then
It's
just
a self-perpetuating cycle. So we've got to look at the public threat of marijuana, which is small compared to the public threat of the more serious violent crimes, rape, robbery. And I just want to use the resources that we waste prosecuting a crime that in 3 states isn't even a crime, and in many other states isn't a crime if you medically need it. I think it is sending the wrong message, and it's driving millennials away. They think our system is unjust because it is unjust. It is broken. I want to draw them back into the democracy, and I think that a strong platform on marijuana is one way to attract younger people to say, look, we are common sense government. We're the adults. We can figure out big importance, small importance, make a reasonable decision with your tax dollar, and not create a public safety threat. So the DA in Brooklyn did exactly what I'm proposing. And he did it in the summer of 14. The sky did not fall. Crime did not go up. In fact, prosecutors there report that they have more time to spend on serious cases. And with a community that's suffering from fraud, I got an incredible scam that came to me today. A caller called up, elderly person being scammed. That's where we need to put the resources. We have to protect the populations that are vulnerable, and we do have to police the internet for fraud as well. So you just can't do it all. And my answer is no more misdemeanor marijuana cases. Let's move that money to testing rape kits first, and then to white-collar fraud on the elderly next.
So,
And so what exactly would be the penalty for you get caught with a small amount under
my plan?
Under 2 ounces? Is it under 2 ounces or under 3 ounces?
It's under 2 ounces.
Under 2 ounces, okay.
And it's for anybody who is charged a first time, a second time, a third time. So why would I do that? I would do that to save money, and I would do it to put the priority on the unaddressed violent crimes. But there would be no penalty. So you might get arrested.
They would have to pay a fine?
Nope.
They wouldn't even be arrested for that amount? Or...
They could be arrested, but no charges would be taken. So if the police department wants to arrest them, they could charge them with paraphernalia. It would be applicable. There could be a fine in municipal court. That's up to the mayor. But it would be up to me as the DA to determine what are the priorities for our taxpayers in terms of public safety. And I put marijuana at the bottom end, and I put rape at the top.
so you mentioned the scam artist with the elderly. What
Yes,
kind of scam
it
was
was very interesting. You know, we saw grand jury reform after the heated election that I ran in 2014 against Evan Anderson. There were a lot of people on the bandwagon with me to reform what they called the pick-a-pal grand jury system.
Our good friend Johnny Mata. Been working on that for years.
He has. He finally pushed grand jury reform through, and Carol Alvarado, I can't say that today. Alvarado. Carol pushed it through along with John Whitmire. And so the grand jury is now selected from the random jury pool. So a friend of mine's father gets this call today from somebody who identified himself as a lieutenant, said, you missed your grand jury service. Bring $8,500 down to a Home Depot. I'll meet you there. Otherwise, we're going to arrest you and file charges. So clearly, anybody who is masquerading as law enforcement or an official from the courts and demanding money at a Home Depot is not legit. That's fraud. But I'd not heard this scam involving the new grand jury process. And I think it's happening to older people because that is who serves on juries. Often. That is who definitely has served in the past on grand juries. And with a brand new system, most people aren't aware of how it works. Now you just receive a regular jury summons and they pick you from that pool, where before it was by invitation only, so to speak.
So I hope this person didn't pay the $8,500.
He did not.
Okay.
He called my
Good.
office, and we've issued a release, or we're issuing a release warning other people about the scam. But it just goes to show you that criminal minds are creative. They're thinking all the time. It was a live person that left a message. In fact, when my friend called on behalf of his father, called the number back, it even had a message: if you're calling about courthouse business, leave a message. But they specifically did not answer the phone again. And I don't think they stayed on the phone long enough for there probably to be a good,
Traceable.
yeah, traceable record.
So now let's talk about Orlando. As you all know, we had a mass shooting in Orlando,
Terrible.
Florida.
Terrible, terrible.
And if I'm not mistaken, the count now is over 50 for,
More people must have passed away.
yeah, if I'm not mistaken. That's a lot of people, you know, taken down by one person and claiming allegiance to ISIS. So let's talk a little bit about gun control now. Now, in the state of Texas, obviously, we're a state that believes in carrying arms. And Javier and I have had this discussion over and over again. He's on one side and I'm on the other side. So I am totally against having a gun that is bigger, badder than the police have.
Right.
Now, I'm okay with the same.
So assault rifles
Exactly.
are out.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm against assault rifles. There's no reason to sell them to the public. They're made only for killing people. And we had a ban on them, and everybody lived just fine without them after the ban. And so I'm in agreement with you, Ben. We shouldn't be selling assault rifles.
Now, it's my understanding, because I don't own a gun, it's my understanding that there are little guns that are just as deadly as the semi-automatic guns. They're little trigger-happy guns, as fast as you can shoot.
Oh yeah,
move your trigger.
most semi-automatic.
Yeah,
like.
I mean,
and let me say, I worked for Ocean Sporting Goods for about
Okay.
12, 13 years during college, and I was like one of their top gun salesmen. So I got to meet a lot of these people, and I like assault for defense, for home defense. You'll be surprised, and it happened to me once, how quickly a argument deflates, you know, when you have that thing backing you up. Because I caught someone breaking in, all they did was saw me with a gun, and they took off. It was over.
yeah, but it could
So-
be any gun. It doesn't have to be a semi-automatic gun to scare them away.
Well, it's a little more intense when they see that rifle, you know, that you're holding that rifle, Ben. I mean,
Well,
that's
Javier,
true.
a shotgun's pretty intimidating. Let me
Well,
suggest.
that's true. That's true too. That's true
And a
too.
shotgun is perfectly legal to carry in your car, to carry down the middle of the street even. Most people don't know that, but it's always been legal to carry a long rifle
Right.
in Texas, even out on
Long
the
rifle.
street.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see them in the back
It'll
of the
stop a
windows of the
crowd.
trucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, most definitely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And believe me, I think something needs to be done in that case. I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense. You have people on no-fly list. Why do they
Now
not
you're
done?
changing your
No,
stance.
I didn't.
He's
You
changing
no,
your stance.
no.
What do you think about the mentally ill?
Where's Pat at?
Mentally ill people
Yeah.
should
Where's
not
your wife
be able
at?
to.
Yeah.
You're changing your stance, but that's okay.
I'm gonna go over your house with my assault rifle. I might let you play with it.
Okay, so obviously you're with me on this. So is there any other things that you would change about the law, the current law?
I think the mentally ill should not be able, if you've been treated by MHMR, if you've had if you've been under the public health care system for mental illness, I think that should be a bar, at least temporarily, to buying a weapon. We've seen so many cases where the people are mentally ill in these mass shootings and they're allowed to buy guns, or they take guns out of somebody's home, or they're given guns. That's a problem. And I think people on the terrorist watch list, if they can't fly because we suspect their alliances are evil, then I don't think we should be selling them guns. So I'm for reasonable gun control. And that said, I'm a staunch Second Amendment supporter. I have a concealed carry license. Don't have to carry it concealed anymore, but I have that license, and I own several firearms. Taught my child how to shoot a firearm. So it's something that is, I think, important to us as Texans in our culture, and the freedom is precious to us. But we can agree that some limitations are reasonable.
And that's actually my stance, Ben. It's not that I want everybody to have a soft.
Yeah.
No, that was you saying that about me, Ben.
You changed the stance
no,
from the last
it's
show.
never changed.
Just look at the recording from last time.
Yeah, let's look at the recording from last time.
So,
Look at the recording.
I have a funny story because my mom just became a concealed gun. What is it? Concealed gun holder? Is that what
Yeah.
you call them?
It's a concealed carry.
Concealed carry. That's right.
Okay.
Yeah.
So she's gone to play with her gun because my son's a police officer and she lives with my son. So it's kind of interesting to see my mom packing, if you will.
Yeah, don't give her any lip.
No, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
I'm all for protecting your home.
But
Yeah, I think women right now, we're very vulnerable. We have these untested serial rapists out there. Burglary is at an all-time high. We have the lowest solve rate in the country on burglaries. And what a dangerous crime a burglary is. Somebody coming into your home. So if your mother's retired or, somebody goes home for lunch, somebody's in your house, that can easily turn into a crime of violence. And so I think that self-protection is really important for women.
And you're talking about somebody that's happened to, Ben. We were
But you
burglarized.
can't get an assault rifle in your purse.
No. And we didn't go for the assault rifle. The assault rifle I keep for Armageddon. Once everything just goes south. But and if I could have got to the gun fast enough, we probably would have killed this guy. We were burglarized once, and then one was a forced entry. But it come to find out the guy was just running from drug dealers. He said, "Please call the police, arrest me. I'm just trying to get out the street because they're out there trying to kill me."
Wow.
And he came through our door, and my son, was met him at the door and pushed him outside the door and closed the door. But and if I could have got the gun fast enough, I probably would have used it.
Wow.
Tell us what the laws are, because I'm not real familiar with the laws. If someone comes into your house, you can shoot them no matter what. Is that correct?
Yeah,
If you feel
we're not
threatened,
talking
that's
dinner
not- yeah.
guests, right?
Yeah.
Right. If someone comes into your house,
Yeah, somebody forces entry into your home in Texas, you have the right to defend yourself, and we have the castle law.
what if it's not forced though? What if the door's open and they just walk in, and you don't know who they are?
So you're supposed to be in fear of your life, and the fear has to be reasonable. You can't just say, "Oh, I'm scared," bang. I mean, it has to be a reasonable belief that person intends you harm, and then you can meet them with that same level of or strength of violence back, or even more. So if you're in fear that they're going to use deadly force, you can use deadly force. It's a very subjective standard. Self-defense is very broad in Texas. I think it's based in our history.
Because it reminds me of that case in
culture.
Pasadena.
Yes.
What's his name?
Joe Horn.
Joe Horn.
But I think that
Where he shot the guy.
Yeah,
I guess
but
he was in the
mistake
yard.
he made was that he's telling everybody what he's going to do. Oh, I can't let this go by. I'm going to go shoot this guy. And he would just shut his mouth and just went over there and say, hey, I was in fear of my life. I don't think he would have.
There's a lot of
half the
truth in
yeah.
that. I think that he kind of talked his way into that charge. But of course,
Exactly.
he was no-billed by a grand jury. And so I think that tells you our community feels like your home is sacred. And that if somebody comes into your home unannounced, uninvited, and they're an intruder, you're in fear for your life, you've got a pretty good pass in Harris County.
Yeah, but wasn't that burglar
He was in the
burglarizing
yard.
next door?
He was.
Yeah.
It wasn't his
It was
home?
complicated, and it wasn't nighttime. It was
Yeah.
during
Yeah,
the day.
during the afternoon.
So
yeah.
I can shoot someone that's burglarizing another home with no problem?
Well,
I would
think
say
he
not unless
approached
you
him,
want to
yeah.
go to the grand jury. And I think, I don't know that grand juries today would react the same way they did with Joe Horn. Part of it was his age. Part of it was there was the sentiment that crime is out of control, that he was being a good neighbor, and that it was somebody else's castle. So my advice to you would be, if you're in fear for your life and you really think somebody's going to use deadly force, then you can go ahead and use it back. But there may be a question as to whether your belief was reasonable.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as long as that burglar is on my property and that person has a gun,
Oh, yeah.
That person has a gun.
it doesn't have to be inside the house. It can be a foot on my property.
It doesn't have to be in your property.
No, you could just call
Out
your
on
mom
the
and she'll come to
street.
protect you, okay?
Out on the street. In fact, for many years, we'd see murders in Texas where somebody shot somebody outside their home, let's say in a bar, in a parking lot, and the fact that they had the pistol and had been carrying it was a crime. But the shooting, the altercation and the shooting, and the subsequent death of the other individual maybe was self-defense, according to a grand jury or even a jury. So the crime of carrying the weapon illegally was valid, but the homicide was excused based on self-defense. So we have these funny things in the law where they almost contradict each other, and yet, you know, it generally comes out in a common sense way. If you're in fear for your life and somebody threatens your life and they're armed and you're armed, you're generally not going to be held criminally accountable.
So you don't see that going anywhere as far as the concealed carry. That's probably here for here to stay.
Well, I mean, it's not even concealed now, right?
Now,
Open carry.
Maybe you want to explain that to me, because I still, I mean, I would not trust that.
So people can, under Texas law now, carry a sidearm or a pistol. Remember, you could always carry a rifle legally or a shotgun, but they can carry it showing, unconcealed. And certain businesses allow them to come in, and if you don't want to allow them to come in, you have to have a large sign posted outside that everybody can see that says you can't bring it in.
Is that where we are now with that?
That's where we are.
Okay, that's where we are. So that's, I guess, have been with the legal challenges, and that's where it's at.
Our legislature passed it. It's the law.
Now that doesn't mean that you can carry a concealed weapon. If you don't have a license, you can't carry a concealed weapon.
That's correct.
Right. That hasn't changed.
Or
but if you want to, if you want to the Wild West and just carry it on your hip there.
If you got a license, you can do it as long as you don't go on a premises that's got a sign. But the proliferation of weapons, huge problem, just in terms of street violence, and this uptick in the murders, especially with domestic violence murders, very disturbing. We need a citywide, countywide plan to address the increasing violence. I think that should be led by the DA. There's no plan now. We mop up blood. They respond. I'd like to see some really good, hard work done by our county leadership. I intend to lead the charge on that if elected, so that we have a plan on not just how to react to mass shootings like we saw in Orlando, but how to prevent them. One way is to prosecute hate crimes. You know, this district attorney's office doesn't prosecute hate crimes, and it's important to send a message that if a victim is targeted because he's Jewish or Latino, remember, those victims in Orlando were almost all Latino. It was a gay bar. Clearly, it's a hate crime, no different than if you went into a synagogue or a mosque and mowed victims down with a gun. It's clearly a hate crime, and it does have terrorist, I think, aspects to it, and the fact that he pledged allegiance to to both ISIS and Hezbollah. But of course, he wasn't even sophisticated enough to know those groups they're not allies. They stand for different things. And so he was much like the gang members in the early 90s that we fought. Sometimes they would say they were Crips, but they would wear red, the color of Bloods. They were ill-informed, but they would shoot each other nonetheless. Yeah. So I think a prevention plan and also a response plan, it's critical for our leadership to have one. And the prevention is all about awareness that we do tolerate diversity. We do embrace in our city. We think it's good for business. We think it's good for quality of life. And we think it's the right humanitarian response. And part of the way you do that is when somebody does go after another person just because of who they are and the group that they're associated with, we should be filing hate crimes on them. We should be asking for a little more punishment because they're doing a little bit more damage to our society than somebody who commits the crime without that hateful motive. They're making a statement, and it's very important for us in the system to make a statement back. And that's what needs to be broadcast, that we will punish haters who pick up a gun or who terrorize a person or a group of people just because of who they are.
You know what, Kim, and I'd be interested to know what do you think here in Texas, and maybe more to narrow down a little more in Harris County, are we prepared for something like that?
You know, I don't know, because I've never heard or seen of Harris County criminal justice plan, not one that's signed off on by everybody, not one that's broadcast to the public, so that we can participate and do our part. And I think we need that. I'll tell you, on day one, I haven't waited. I've been talking to different leaders around the county about our response and our preparation for a mass shooting. And I think while police have some response plans, there's not a prevention plan in place. And we need both.
You know, that was going to be my last question for Kim, Ben. What happens day one of a Kim Ogg DA administration? What happens?
We close the door to the prosecution of misdemeanor marijuana, and we start testing rape kits on January the 2nd. We eliminate that backlog. We get a burglary task force together. We link up the crimes, and we figure out who's committing them where, and we go after those guys. And when it comes to training and public engagement, I want the public to know my door will be open. I'm interested in their ideas. I'm interested in their problems. And everybody, especially the international community and the communities that don't speak English as their first language, they need access right now. And I think once our millennials start to see the justice system become fairer, that they will become engaged in our democracy. They'll begin to vote and participate. They're already taxpayers, but our country needs our young people, and we can't afford to have people say, oh, I don't vote because it doesn't matter and it doesn't count and the system's unfair. So what you can expect on January 1 is a fairer justice system starting day one.
So I have to get to this because we have 5 minutes left. Immigration. Now, that's a big topic. Now, Adrian Garcia took a lot of flack because what was it called? The
287G.
207G or something.
287.
287G.
Right.
Yeah.
Because of deportation of immigrants that were in the jails. What is your stance on that?
Well, that it got overused by the federal government, that they were deporting people for minor crimes, they were holding them. And right now the bail for undocumented is an automatic $35,000. So there's a system in place right now that absolutely discriminates against undocumented people and makes it much, much harder for them to get out. And of course, the hold by ICE will keep them in the jail, even for minor offenses like traffic tickets. So we don't treat our citizens that way. And the purpose of bail, at least, is simply to ensure that you return to court. And so when we're not looking at people's individual circumstances, just because somebody's undocumented does not always mean that they are a greater risk to the community. Many folks have been here since they were children. It's not their fault that they came here. They've been law-abiding prior to that, and all of a sudden they find themselves in the deportation mix. And I think that's shocking to them because they identify as Americans, not as undocumented illegals who should be deported. So I think we've got some work with our community to explain to people that there's harsher penalties if you're undocumented. But I can tell you that bail schedule should be changed. It's discriminatory on its face. So I do believe in Homeland Security being notified, but I want to see them stop deporting people and holding them for very minor crimes. And I think that we need to stop the financial unfairness and the burden that we're placing on these folks. They have kids, they have families, they have responsibilities. We need to treat people like human beings.
Which brings me to the next question. Now, some people can't afford bail. That have nothing to do with immigrant status or anything like that. Just a regular person on the street gets picked up, cannot afford bail, but it's a basic crime. They can be out in a day or so, but they end up staying in jail for X number of days.
Well, here's what happens. They get in jail, they can't afford bail, their car's impounded, their kids need to go to school, they got to get to work. The easiest thing for them to do, the easiest way out, is to plead guilty. And so they do, whether they're guilty or not. And really, it's important in our system that a person who's going to plead guilty, they've got to really be guilty. If they aren't guilty, then they are entitled to a trial. And we shouldn't make them sit in jail to wait for that trial, not when they have good ties to the community, a job, a family, people who will vouch for them. We can secure their PR bond in many ways. And you don't see any pretrial bonds or personal recognizance bonds in Harris County. When I began 30 years ago, they were common. But we've got a system that's run by a district attorney who believes that everybody ought to get the same bail regardless of who they are or what their ties are to the community, and that they should never get pretrial bonds. And it's discriminatory against the poor. And so, again, trying to get our millennials back in, I think they see this as an unfair system. One system for people with money and one system for people without. And that is a crime. That's what I'm going to end.
I hate to tell you, but we've run out of time. I appreciate you coming out. I know you're a busy woman during this time with the campaign season, and we hope to have you back.
Thank you, Ben.
As a winner.
I'll be back.
We'll be back next week. We're live here every Monday night at 6 p.m., so we hope that you will join us. Kim Ogg, obviously did a great today. Javier?
I love Kim. She's a fantastic lady and one heck of a servant leader in our community.
All right, we'll see you next week. See you later. Bye.
On a makeshift home with the dust black shadow. Pulled a hammer from a coal mine down when your daddy was smoking. Comb my hair back, stuck